What's going on, everybody? Zach here. Welcome to the Imperium Racing YouTube channel. And today I'm going to show you how to inspect and place a serpentine belt. We're doing it on the Subaru today, but to be honest, almost every serpentine belt is the same exact idea. This one is going to be really easy to show it on because of where everything's located on the car, which I'll show you shortly. But it's going to be the same idea for pretty much any car with the serpentine belt. Drive belt, serpentine belt, whatever you want to call it. Serpentine just refers to it being one continuous belt. As opposed to older cars like my Honda Outside that engine came off of. That car has a belt for the power steering, a belt for the AC, and a belt for the alternator. So it has 3 different drive belts. This car only has one serpentine belt. That's pretty normal nowadays. First thing is, let's pop the hood. If you don't know where your hood release is, it's probably down in here somewhere. If you have a gas door release, sometimes it'll be near that. Oh, I know it's dark in here, but this one's for the fuel door. And the hood is right here. It's got a nice little picture of a car. God, I should really have a flashlight in here. So unprofessional. And once you get that unlatched, the hood will be lifted up a tiny bit. And there's going to be a latch in here you have to press. This one's pretty easy. Just goes to the side. And then we're going to have this guy sitting somewhere, hopefully. And here's a trick that a lot of people don't know about. The fuck? This is where your hood support goes. It's got a nice little arrow right there, right? And most people are like, yeah, this is how you work on your car. But if you work at a dealer or you're somewhat professional or you've just worked on a lot of cars, you realize most cars have a second hole. And what that's gonna do is open the hood further, give you more room so you don't bonk your nog. This is much easier to do with 2 hands. I promise. Boom, look at that. It's also gonna let in a lot more light so you're not working in the dark. First hole for noobs, second hole that's not labeled. Huh. Oh, this is what it's for though, trust me. Alrighty, and if you have a car with hood struts, sometimes there will be a button on it to push that button to get to the second position. Shout out to my Mercedes boys. Now that we're in here, you might be thinking, what the fuck is going on? What is this? Well, this is a car, this is the engine, and that's your drive belt. Look how easy that looks. It goes around that pulley at the bottom, this big pulley, and then we got 3 pulleys at the top. That's nothing. Only 5 pulleys? Nothing. Every car that has a serpentine belt is gonna have a belt tensioner somewhere. If you can tell, this one right here got this cool little windy part attached to it and a spot to put your wrench. Well, that is the tensioner. Another dead giveaway is it has this hole right here that you can line up with that hole, and it's got this little arrow to tell you where it's supposed to be. So again, this car is perfect to show you how to do a drive belt on because the tensioner is right on top and super easy to see. I'm not gonna lie to you, a lot of cars, tensioner is much harder to get to. I looked it up for a Sienna minivan recently for my brother, and front wheel drive minivan, the engine sideways, and you got to go in through the fender well, and the tensioner's down there on the front of the engine. It really depends on your car. Basically, you just got to find it, but once you find it, super easy. It's only a couple steps. First step, if you're new to this, take a picture of your drive belt so you know where it's routed. Some cars will have a picture of how to route it somewhere under the hood. The Subaru doesn't. Probably because it's a pretty simple belt. The owner's manual probably has a picture of it in there. Shit. Oh, we've gone too far, guys. Anyways, moral of the story is it's in here. Trust me. Oh, what? Oh, it doesn't tell you how to do it. Okay, that's lame. I was wrong. Google it. Google it. So, most cars you can find a picture. This car is a great example of why you should take a picture before you take it off. But, you know, this one's pretty obvious. It goes all the way around the outside and then comes around the crank and around the tensioner. So, it's basically a loop other than where the tensioner is. So, pretty easy. I'm going to take this piece off just for the sake of the video. You don't need to do this on your car. You can easily get a wrench on there. So for the Subaru, all we need is the belt, a 17mm wrench, or you can use a socket and a ratchet, and something to hold the tensioner. So I have a bunch of these. These are from tensioners that came pre-tensioned with a locking pin in them. I've saved a lot of the locking pins because they are super useful. There's a couple there. I got more in here. They're super useful. So I've saved all different kinds of sizes, but you can use a screwdriver, a pick, anything. If you don't know what a pick is, it looks like this. There's straight ones, right? That's too big, but you get the idea. You could use that. You could use a tiny screwdriver, use a pocket screwdriver, jeweler screwdriver. This is a pick set, use those. Although the skinnier tips will get broken off. So if you're using a pick, make sure you have room to get it all the way in there. Or a 90-degree pick sometimes is good because it's easier to work with. But any little piece of metal that's solid enough will work. Now normally I like to get OEM parts, but I bought this belt just because I was afraid this one was going to break pretty soon. So I just got it in a rush. Riley's had it in stock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this new belt on. That is the cheapest brand you can get pretty much. But I'm going to put it on, and then this old belt I'm going to keep in the trunk just as a spare in case something ever happens. And you might be wondering why I want to replace this belt. You can see some marks there. And right where the belt is stitched together, it's fraying. You can kind of see some fraying on the edge there. I'll show you once I get it off. It was really kind of a small spot to see. And I noticed it when I was doing the oil change the other day. So whenever you change your oil, top off fluids, make sure you're checking everything under the hood. I'll be using a small magnetic tray. You don't need that, but I'm bougie. Set that out of the way. Now we can really see what we got going on here. So like I was saying before, you're always going to have a couple pulleys and something's going to be the tensioner. So the tensioner, pretty dead giveaway. It's this piece because it's got a moving, swinging arm, kind of a coil up here where it holds tension, and it's going to have these two holes that you can fit this piece into. And when you line up these two holes, it's going to hold tension on this so you can work with the belt. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. And one thing that's important to note here is this tensioner, pretty obvious. It's got a big old nub on it for a ratchet or for a socket, which is super easy. A lot of tensioners will just have a square hole in them, and that square hole is just for a ratchet with no socket on it. I don't have any of those on hand, but I'll put a picture of it up. All you do is you put your ratchet in there with absolutely nothing on it. For this tensioner, we're going to pull it the way we want to. Damn, that thing's got some tension on it. Pull that. We're going to slide this pin through there. When I release, that pin, you can probably see now, is holding all of the tension, making our belt loose. So now we can take our belt off. Usually it's easiest to slide off the tensioner first. Oh, Jesus. That is not good. Okay, so, a good thing to note, that's pretty funny. I think I'm remembering now that when I worked at the dealer, when we did belts, we would usually recommend a tensioner at the same time because they're usually bad. And I kind of forget how many miles are on this car. So, I don't know if you can tell, but that tensioner is wobbly. I don't know if this video is doing it justice, but that shouldn't have any play in it. And no, you can't tighten this or anything like that. It's a bearing. So that should not have play. So we're gonna have to replace that. I don't have one right now, so we're gonna put the new belt on, and then we are going to order a tensioner. Surprisingly, that's not making any noise. Usually pulleys start to make noise when they start to go out, but none of these are making noise. Cool. Always check your tensioner. Here is that section of the belt I was referring to. When I did the oil change. When I did the oil change, I was like, oh, it's coming apart. especially when this is on the corner of the pulley, you can kind of tell. And now that I have this belt in my hands, it really feels like rough, like it's coming apart. These things are supposed to be smooth on the back. This thing feels rough. It might be a new way to test belts. It feels super rough, like it's just coming apart. Interesting. So earlier I mentioned I will tell you the one thing that you can mess up on this. And really the only thing you can mess up is routing your belt incorrectly or putting the wrong belt on the car. So two things we're gonna do. One we already did, which is take a picture of the old belt before we took it off so we know how to route it. The second thing we're gonna do is compare the size of the old belt to the new belt. Throw that on the ground real quick. Pop this new belt out. Go like this, and hopefully it's relatively the same size. Otherwise, I'm gonna be like, hey O'Reilly's, why do you always do this to me? The new one's gonna be a weird shape, but it's okay. Looks pretty damn close to me. Maybe a little bit longer, but it's on the inside. Normally you can just kind of hold it up by hand and see. It's probably not going to be perfectly the same size, but it should be pretty damn close. Yeah, so with the old one on the inside, it does the same thing. Pops down a little bit, which is what it did when I had them reversed. So anyways, these are the same size, which is good. That's what we wanted. So we'll leave that old belt that is clearly like dry rotting. That's so interesting. And we're going to order this tensioner tonight before we forget. You took your picture, you know how to route your belt. We compared the new belt to the old one to make sure it's the same. Now, when we're routing, something to pay attention to is obviously the grooved pulleys go on the inside and the smooth pulleys go on the outside. So when you're routing your belt, that should be something pretty obvious for you to look out for. If you have your belt routed like that, and you have these ridges down on a smooth pulley, that's going to be wrong 99% of the time. So we're going to route this around the edge first. Another nice thing is this car has nothing really in the way of the belt. Some cars you'll have to take off a fan clutch, something weird. But this one's pretty good. So we got that wrapped around everything. Normally this is easier with two hands. That looks pretty good. What I always do is run my fingers around the outside of each one. I kind of, even the ones down there you can't see, I grab them like this. And what you do when you grab it is your finger, your hand should go all the way across it, and if the belt's sitting up on the edge like this, you're gonna be able to feel that. It's gonna be super, super obvious, right? That feels super different than this. So, feel it, you're like, oh man, I can feel the groove. Yeah, that's all fucked up. Get it correct, cool. And to be completely honest with you, if you have your belt like this, and you start the car, it's probably gonna go into the right spot. 99 out of 100 times, it's just gonna go into the right spot. But, especially for the ones you can't see the other side of it, just kind of grab on it, don't touch that hot exhaust, grab on it, we're good to go. Now, we got our belt in the right spot, centered on the tensioner. We're gonna go ahead and take this pin out, which is just gonna be this. Again, if you had a ratchet and a socket, just go from this side. I'm using my wrench. Gotta use both hands, so set this down. Oh, it's not a bad angle. Not bad at all, boys. So we're gonna pull this out, a little bit of tension off, remove the pin, slowly let the tension back, and it should be good. If you go to let tension back on, and it goes really far, if it goes, further than it does when you took it off, or if it just keeps going and keeps going, stop, go back, put your pin back in, you did something wrong. It should not go that far. It's usually a very small amount of movement from where it runs to the service position, I guess if you want to call it. You start right here, you pull to here and put your pin. When you go back, you should go back to that same spot, right? The worn out belt is not going to make that much of a difference in the tensioner. So if it's in a crazy different position after you fuck something up, stop, go back, make sure your belt routing is correct. Now that we're done, belt's tight, you can check again, make sure you didn't move it while you're doing stuff. ready to rock. Any covers you had to take off, put back on. I'm gonna get really good at working on a car with my left hand if I keep filming videos like this. Super easy job, guys. And like I was saying earlier, if you don't have, you know, a big nut on your tensioner like that, then what you can do is you might have a square hole that your ratchet fits in, just like this. And if you're like, oh, it's too bulky, I can't do it, I can't make it work, then you get your little extension, or your littler extension, and you do that. I wouldn't recommend using a wobble for that, but throw your extension on there, good to go. Moral of the story is, placing your drive belt is very easy, only requires a couple of tools, and it's really not that hard to do. Pretty inexpensive for the belts. If you go to a dealer, they're going to charge you at least hour labor, which they have to. That's just how it works. But if you want to do it yourself, super easy. Again, important things, take a picture before you take anything apart. Finding out where your tensioner is, getting to your tensioner, that's going to be a little difficult. Some of them are hard to get onto. But once you get that tensioner moved, slide your pin in. Not all of them have a spot for a pin, but if it does, pin it. If it doesn't have a spot for a pin, you really can't find one, then what you have to do is hold it, take the belt off, and then you can release it, or try and swap out the belt if you have a second set of hands, however you want to do that. But a lot of them have a hole for a pin. Put your new belt on, make sure it's routed correctly, give it a startup, make sure it doesn't come off. Should be good to go. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, this is a DIY. I highly encourage. It's going to save you a ton of money for a really easy job. Really, the only hard part of this job is where your belt and tensioner are located on your car. Sometimes it's annoying, sometimes it's hard. But even if it's hard to get to, it's usually still a really quick job. The hardest belt to get to with the most inexperienced person doing it, you're probably still going to do it in under 30 minutes. So, highly recommend it. Only a couple tools you need. Make sure you get your belt routed correctly. Check for any other pulleys that are loose or worn when you have the belt off. And start her up. Should be good to go. That's how you do it. Very similar on most cars. I'm going to end the video so I stop rambling. Any questions, comments, other tips you got, anything you got, drop it in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your day, night, evening. Have a good one. Appreciate you guys watching. Thank you. Peace. Yeah.